afternoon to you. Good morning, wherever you are. I know we have guests who follow us from the West Coast and some visitors from Ireland. My name is Lenwood Sloan. I'm the executive director of the Commonwealth Monument Project. We are the official site of the International Institute for Peace through Tourism. And I am happy to say, as of this Tuesday, June 15th, we are here in the capital city of Harrisburg, the 30th site in the Global Heritage Network of the Toni Morrison Society, having dedicated our bench by the road. This afternoon, thank God we get to talk about gathering again. The universe has seen fit to part the veil on the COVID pandemic. We have suffered 14 months of isolation of fellowship. And today we are going to begin our progress back to the center of the circle and back to the gathering of our families, our communities, our friends, joining with the ancestors, those who are standing with us now, and those who are waiting on the thresholds to join us here on Earth. I believe in the Native American that we simultaneously look back at those who have passed and prepare the way for those who are coming in. The notion of Jubilee is a word that is both biblical in its nature and historical in the reference to African American culture. Those of you who have studied the Bible or theologian students know that the concept of Jubilee comes from Leviticus, and it is the year after the cycle of 7 cycles of 7 years, or 49 years. So according to Leviticus, on the 50th year, we were to rest from work. We were to free those who were enslaved. We were to relieve or retire all debts. We were to remember all promises and fulfill them. We were to gather and share food. We were to make a joyful noise. So Jubilee is often used on the 50th anniversary. There is also a Diamond Jubilee on the 60th anniversary and a Silver Jubilee on the 75th anniversary and a Golden Jubilee on the 100th anniversary. That word Jubilee resonates across many faiths and many religions. The notion of Jubilee also finds itself in the history and the heritage of African Americans. In September of 1862, Abraham Lincoln asked the Northern governors to meet in a secret meeting in Altoona, Pennsylvania. I always wonder why they chose Altoona, Pennsylvania. It's called the Governor's Meeting. It happened on the Pennsylvania Railroad platform as Governor Curtin of Pennsylvania asked the governors to meet him at 10 a.m. Trains arrived from all over northern states. The gentleman crossed the platform and stood on the street to count the votes that Lincoln had to pass the Emancipation Proclamation. We then established 2 important historic events in African American tradition. The first was Watch Night, the December 31st night. It was not only to watch the new year coming, but to watch and to wait for the Emancipation Proclamation to be passed. And the second was the day of Jubilee, January 1st, 1863, when across the country, the Emancipation Proclamation was read on street corners, in church steps, on city halls, as the bells rang in Jubilee. I would be bereft as a historian if I did not remind you that the Emancipation Proclamation did not free a single enslaved person. It is the great myth that I grew up with that the Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves. Lincoln was a very clever lawyer, as you well know. And so he wrote a brief to the states that had seceded from the Union that unless they returned to the Union by January 1st, 1863, all their enslaved people would be considered to be free. But the Emancipation Proclamation did not include a provision for the enslaved people in the states that remained in the Union. So Kentucky and Maryland and Missouri and Delaware retained their enslaved people after January 1st, 1863. In fact, so did New York City. Pennsylvania had its Gradual Abolition Act eclipsed by further laws. And so the last slaves in Pennsylvania were freed in 1863, in the December of 1863. But still, we remember the Emancipation Proclamation as a federal piece of legislation which came into being, and the freedom of the enslaved people resulted in the last 2 years of the war. One great provision of the Emancipation Proclamation, however, was the acknowledgement and the recruitment of the United States colored troops. The United States colored troops began to recruit in 1863, and by the end of the war, 180,000 men were recruited as African-American patriots. Unfortunately, in May of 1865, there was what we know as the Grand Review. The United States Civil War soldiers, with the exception of the African-American soldiers, marched in Washington, D.C., down Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House to be mustered out or relieved of their service. And we remember that May Day for the absence of those 180,000 Black soldiers. Well, the women of African-American societies in general, and the women of the Henry Highland Garnett League in particular, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, organized the Grand Review of the United States Colored Troops on November 14th of 1865, and 25,000 soldiers with free passage on the Pennsylvania Railroad came to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, marched through the old 8th Ward, down Tanner's Alley, to the home of Simon Cameron, past secretary, and were mustered out. And that day, too, goes into history as the Great Jubilee. Jubilee was used a fourth time in African-American history. In April of 1870 upon the passage of the 15th Amendment. Great parades across the country, but we acknowledge parades in Pittsburgh, in Harrisburg, in Lancaster, in York, and in Philadelphia were held to recognize, commemorate, and celebrate the passage of the 15th Amendment. Those parades have connected themselves with the memory of Juneteenth, because each Juneteenth we simultaneously commemorate the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation in Galveston, Texas, which finally ended the last skirmishes. It did not free the last slaves, but it acknowledged and promulgated to the last battles to lay your weapons down. And it informed 19,000 enslaved people and contraband that the war was finally over. This week in Pittsburgh, in Philadelphia, and in York, there will be Jubilee parades for Juneteenth. And so the word has come to mean homecomings, reunions, picnics, celebrations, commemorations, wreath lays, fireworks. But it has also come to mean rededication to the cause of equity, justice, parity, and inclusion. So with every Juneteenth celebration, you will find advocacy work and voter registration and acknowledgement of great African-American men and women who suffered for that vigilance of the civil rights and civil liberties. We commemorate today that our federal government has passed this day a proclamation that Juneteenth is now an official federal holiday. What a day of Jubilee today will be. But it is with a tear that I also remember that this is the 6th anniversary of the death of people who, on a Wednesday night prayer meeting 6 years ago in South Carolina, were slaughtered in their own church. And so it's a day of memorial and remembering that the work is not done. But it is time for us to set aside our sorrows and think about the hard work of our ancestors. It is a time for us to come together again. It is a time for reunion. And so today, we also commemorate the work of Dr. Ione Vargus at the Temple University Family Reunion Institute, who will give us a primer on how to plan that family reunion, which we have put off for these 14 or 16 months. And so we're going to look at the call home for 100 families of the old 8th Ward. We're going to explore how our colleagues and friends from Messiah University and their students searched for the descendants of the 100 families of the old 8th Ward that we are honored. We're going to receive a starter kit and a virtual primer from Dr. Sharonn Williams about how you can find your family, how you can research your genealogy. And we're going to have the representatives of Dr. Ione Vargus and the Family Reunion Institute give us a starter kit on planning reunions. I'm going to switch my history hat with my P.T. Barnum hat for a minute and remind you that African American family reunions, until the pandemic, were the largest growing niche market in the tourism industry. The largest niche market in the tourism industry. I asked my friends and colleagues who have joined us to please, who are not in Pennsylvania, to please consult with your tourism industry. We know that tourism is the second industry in Pennsylvania. And we know that Pennsylvania is the fourth most popular destination for homecomings. And so we're ready to welcome you home for whatever reason you are gathering. And I would like to introduce my very dear friend and colleague, Dr. Jean Corey, who will tell you about our program to find the descendants of 100 families of Harrisburg, the city, the county, and the Commonwealth's capital's Old Eighth Ward. Dr. Jean Corey, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And I think Ashley has the PowerPoint. I have to say that the past few years working with Lenwood and his vision for the Commonwealth Monument Project has been one of the most exciting enterprises of my life, and it's so many students and faculty at Messiah, and largely we've loved working with him. We've loved discovering so many things, but it's been a time of us learning and a lot of time unlearning in order to learn. And so we've been so grateful for it. But as he was talking about Jubilee, I remembered that, actually, if you can go to the next slide, that in the Old Eighth Ward, and this has been, these churches have been a large site for finding the descendants of the 100 voices, the 100 people represented on the monument of the Old Eighth Ward. Actually, Ashley, can you go back 1 second? I'm sorry. So if you'll look at the pedestal right there, I just realized that there might be people that aren't familiar with this, that 4 brilliant orators, abolitionists, advocates, journalists standing here on the monument. But on the pedestal of the monument, there are 100 names and movers and shakers, and as Lenwood said, catalytic agents that lived in the Old Eighth Ward or passed through the Old Eighth Ward and really shaped the life there. And so our job was to find, Caleb Jackson actually identified the 100 voices, the 100 names, and our job was to find the descendants and find the stories, right, the biographies of these 100 names. And so, but one of the things that we discovered as we were working is, of course, the institutions, the sites where these people gathered. And actually, Lenwood did another project earlier with the Bethel AME Church, which was one of the churches. But now you can forward, Ashley, sorry. That this a Jubilee of Freedom that was issued from Bethel AME Church, and this was in the Harrisburg Telegraph in 1863. But they were responding to the Emancipation Proclamation, And so they said it begins, whereas Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, did on the first day of January 1863 issue a proclamation that those states or parts of states that were resisting the lawful authority of the government of the United States, that their slaves should be freed on the 1st of January 1863. Therefore, now Ashley, if you will go, resolved that we, the colored citizens of the city of Harrisburg, hail the first day of January as a new era in our country's history. So this was just 15 days later that this resolution comes forth. And they say, a day in which injustice and oppression were forced to flee and cower before the benign principles of justice and righteousness, a day in which the goddess of liberty checked the jewels of justice, presented this to the sable sons and daughters of the South in the inestimable boon of liberty, a day with which the enfranchised will be able to look forward into the future with a full assurance that they will be able to sit down and make their own vine and fig tree with none to molest them or make them afraid. And then, if you will go on, Ashley, they go on to say, that if our wishes resolved that if our wishes had been consulted, we would have preferred that the proclamation should have been general instead of partial. But we can only say to our brethren of the border states, be of good cheer. The day of your deliverance draweth nigh. Do not contradict the rules of propriety and good citizen, for the rod of your oppressors will eventually be smitten by the omnipotence of truth. The ark of liberty will yet dwell within your borders and rest within your gates. The fires of freedom shall light your hilltops, and your valley shall be me. And then if you'll go on to the next slide. And they end with resolved. There's a few more resolutions, but they say resolved that although the proclamation was not made as an act of philanthropy or as a grand deed of justice due to those suffering to the bonds, but simply as a war measure, still in it we recognize the hand of God, and for it we are constrained to say, roll forward that day when America soil shall no more be polluted with that crime against God, American slavery, but all will be able to say, glory to God in the highest, on earth, peace and goodwill to men. And so this was the site of, as Bethel AME Church was actually the site of much organizing and lots of actions that were really propelling this community and the nation towards a more perfect union. And so it's been with such delight that we've discovered these voices and discovered the work of these people, but even more so.
When they come to us in the.
I'm sorry, your mic is
on. But even more so, it has been finding the descendants who reflect the very work that their ancestors did. So Ashley, if you'll go to the next slide, I will say that our work began even before the 100 Monument Project, which is why Lenwood came to us and asked if we'd be interested in partnering with them. Digital Harrisburg, and you can find this website, digitalharrisburg.com. All these maps and all this information about the 100 Voices is on the digitalharrisburg.com. But many students spent hours and hours and hours entering census data so we could map the individuals of the old 8th Ward. And after they had it mapped, it's a map that you can actually, any of you could go in and you can enter the information that you want and find, you know, who lived at a particular address, or if you had some relatives and you want to know if they lived there, you could put their last name in there. And so we were really excited about this, and we were anxious to find out if there were families that, you know, still around that had lived in the old 8th Ward. At the time, we were teaching a class in the city, and I'm going to give a plug for it right now. It's the Hoverter course, and it's every year we offer this class. It's free tuition for humanities-based classes, and it's geared towards people who haven't had the opportunity to go to college and want to try college out. And so we, my colleague David Pettigrew, who's a history professor here at Messiah, and I had had an evening called Harvesting History. And we had several people who had grown up in Harrisburg, and we wanted to see if they could find any relatives or know anybody that lived in the Old 8th Ward. And so David came and showed us the map. And if you'll go to the next slide, Ashley. That night we were very excited. We were hoping to find a lot of people, but we only found one person in the class. But as you can see, it was a mother and daughter. And actually we often have families that are in the class, which is pretty exciting. A mother and daughter, and they found their great-great-great-grandmother. And so they are pointing to the house where their great-great-grandmother lived. And we were very excited about that. And so if you'll go to the next slide. But it turns out that the great-great-grandmother, this is Harriet McClintock Marshall, and this other one, Catherine Yelitz McClintock. Actually, Catherine Yelitz McClintock is, she was German, and she moved here in the 1700s. She married an African-American man, and Mr. McClintock, and she had a few children. One of them was Harry McClintock Marshall, and Harry McClintock Marshall is on the 100 Names. But Catherine herself, she was one of the founders of Wesley Union AME Zion Church. And Harriet Marshall, maybe some of you have seen this picture of Harriet Marshall because it was on a mural on the building that recently collapsed on 6th Street. And so, but both of them were conductors on the Underground Railroad. They were very active at Wesley Union AME Zion, which was a station on the Underground Railroad, and they established a school there, and they were also the forebears of many very important people in Harrisburg community. Many educators and that have really made a real difference in Harrisburg. So that was our first find, and they brought to us they had done their work as a family, and they had documented their family history. And so we had that family history, and it just turned out that many people in that family history were on the list of names that Caleb Jackson provided for the 100 Names. So they were the beginning of finding many great stories of movers and shakers in the Old 8th Ward and in Harrisburg. If you go to the next slide, Ashley. So that was our first unofficial. Then we wanted to figure out, how do we find out, how do we make connections to the descendants of these people that can help us find out more information about them. And Lenwood actually thought of the fact that they used to have this. Harrisburg actually had the most notorious commissioner fugitive slave commissioner, notorious for returning fugitive slaves. His office was right on Walnut Street. So they have posted signs, "Do you know me?" to return the fugitive slaves. And what if we turn this around and we had postcards that found returning descendants, and it really turned that around to a much more generative, life-giving way of thinking about it. And so they made these cards up for out of the census data, and we started posting them on Facebook, sending them around and having them at events to try and find connections to the 100 Names. Ashley, if you'll go to the next one. And Lenwood also had this brilliant idea of making posters out of these names. So these were in the lawn of the Capitol for about 5 or 6 weeks, and before the monument was installed, and people could walk around and look at the names and see if they knew them, be interested in them. This was before the monument was installed. If you'll go to the next one. And so this is one of the things that where we found a lot of descendants and a lot of information have been in the churches. Many of the 100 names went to Wesley, Union, AME, Zion, Bethel, AME, Capital Presbyterian Church, all really important churches in the history of our city. And they were always located very close to each other. In the Old Eighth Ward, they were on the same block. And then once Old Eighth Ward was raised, they moved across the street to 6th and Forester, and they were in the same area again. And we know from newspaper clippings that they were always organizing and working together, which was exciting to see. But many of the families belong to these churches, and some of them belong to the church at one census that, 10 years, and then 10 years later would belong to the other church. So there's a lot of movement between the churches. One of the 100 names is Ann Amos, and she was a suffragist in her church, and the woman of the Zion owe a debt of great gratitude to her. Should not her memory be held sacred? This is written by John Scott, who's another name on the 100 names. And many of his family members are still here and have been educators in Harrisburg and done phenomenal work in the city of Harrisburg, following the trail of their father. But he finishes this tribute to her. The blazing sun of drifting snow through the blazing sun of drifting snows, through the rains of heated drought, when the men were lax or mourners wept, she was always at her church. And of her widow's mite, she always gave to God's cost to foster and advance. And he finishes, so should not her memory be held sacred. And I think that's, Ashley, if you'll go to the next slide, I think that's the beautiful thing about having the monument and having the pedestal and having these names installed, so that we can hold these names sacred, and we can remember the work they did. And as Lenwood pointed out, is connecting the past to the future, having a sense of moving that forward. Ashley, if you'll go to the next slide. They were educators, they were artists, lawyers, custodians, beauticians, Sunday school teachers, social workers, nurses, doctors, chauffeurs, domestics, homemakers, caterers, professors, musicians, and journalists. They had different careers and talents, but they shared a commitment to creating a better world for future generations. They struggled for justice, sustained by hope and faith that one day justice would prevail, as we heard in the earlier Jubilee proclamation. If you'll go to the next one, this is a picture of the Second Baptist Church in their early years, and all of these churches had, we know again from the newspaper articles, often had their own jubilees, and we know that there was great food and great celebration and cooking. And I don't know if this is from one of them, but I love the picture, and many of the families that are represented on the 100 names were part of the Old Eighth Ward as well. If you go to the next one. They were civil and human rights activists, poets, journalists, musicians, who used their talent to bring beauty and uplift their people to challenge the legacies of slavery, Jim Crow, police violence, segregation, and redlining. One person that is on the Old Eighth Ward that we've been very smitten with is Maud Coleman. And if you go to the Digital Harrisburg, all the documents that I'm referring to that are associated with these people are on the website, so you can look at them. But she wrote a lovely letter, really powerful letter, actually, to Governor Duff, really challenging him on, this was in 1950 that she wrote the letter, when the second community was raised again. The community had moved across to Forester and 6th Street, and then that was raised in order to build government buildings. And she really challenged him on that task. Maud Coleman, one of the descendants that we've discovered, actually, if you'll move on, one of the descendants we discovered is Yvonne Hollis, and she actually is an educator herself. She was superintendent of Central Dauphin District at one time. She was was head of the Boys and Girls Club. She's done tons and tons for education, following in her great aunt's footsteps, and Maud Coleman was a social worker, so she shares many of her same gifts and passion, and she's pointing to Maud Coleman's name there. And very exciting development on the 15th, when we had the Toni Morrison dedication, is they made June 15th Maud Coleman Day. So we will be celebrating Maud Coleman Day on June 15th, and I hope every June 15th great celebration is made of that. If you'll go on to the next one. Many of the names listed were educators, and many of the descendants were educators. And if you'll go on to the next one, including the woman you're going to hear from next, Sharonn Williams, who has really dedicated her life to education. And so one of the exciting things that we found are in finding the descendants, and the descendants found the descendants, as you'll see with Sharonn, who has a group of, she started a group called, I'll let Sharonn tell you about it, but Sharonn is a retired educator, but she's really, she's still educating in mighty ways, and thank goodness she gets to educate some of us older folks now, so that's pretty exciting. But she started a genealogy group and with the descendants, and so a lot of the descendants did research on the people, on the names, their ancestors, and were able to write biographies and contribute them to there's a book that was published as a result of this 100 Voices, and their biographies of their descendants are found in that book. So this is Sharonn, who is a descendant of Ephraim Slaughter, one of the 100 names, a fantastic man. And I'll let Sharonn tell you more about her Ephraim Slaughter. But over on the other side is Charlotte Glover, who's related to Hannah Braxton Jones. And so they were very gracious and came out and were willing to do oral interviews, oral histories with our students, our children, our students, which was really just such a thrill for our students. But as you can see, she's showing some of the things of her family that she found, and we all thought it was pretty exciting. So if you'll go to the next slide. And oh, Sharonn, I want you to tell about this. This is a romance story that we're getting a good picture of from her family. And so in order to scan it well, we had to stand on the, my colleague is standing on the table so he can get a good picture, but I'll let Sharonn fill you in on that. The next slide. Oh, actually, I think you skipped one slide. No, maybe you didn't. Sorry. Oh, you didn't slip one slide. That's okay. The slide that I thought you skipped actually was, there's a picture of Esther Popel. So Esther Popel, oh, there you go. Got it. Thank you. Esther Popel is a well-known writer, as is Alice Dunbar, Alice Dunbar Nelson, and Gwendolyn Bennett, all associated with the Harlem Renaissance, and really brilliant writers. Esther Popel, though, went to Dickinson. She's the first African-American student that went to Dickinson. And she has a diary. They have a diary of hers when she was 18 years old. That's in the archives, and it's really exciting to read, because actually she often mentions the churches and what's going on in the churches. She's 18 at that point. She's just thrilled because Alice Dunbar Nelson came to town, and she was excited about that. She also she actually, Esther Popel and Gwendolyn Bennett lived very close together, like a couple doors down from each other. But Esther Popel's, in her diary, she names many 100 voices, which, so we were able kind of to track and make connections and find some of the history through this 18-year-old's diary that we have, we have access to. So that was really, really exciting too. So if you'll go into the next one. Wait, so go back to the young man, I'm sorry. And again, this is Lenwood's genius. He's always very conscious about connecting, having it be all ages, multi-generational, that there's young people and elders in the same room together, connecting them. And I think that is then the beauty and the genius of his vision. But if you'll see here, there's a young man, and actually, this is a longer story, but he wrote a poem about the woman that he's holding up. We've had a lot of poetry workshops around this. It's been very wonderful, but he wrote a poem about Hannah Braxton Jones. That's a picture of her. She's one of the names on there, and she's also has many descendants that have been involved in great ways with this project. And her great granddaughter is Marion Dornell, who actually passed away a few years ago, but is a poet and wrote Unicorn in Captivity. And she worked with this young man on some poetry. So she gave him that picture. Because it's framed between the 15th and 19th Amendments, and it really is a wonderful civics lessons for for adults as well as young people. He's here at the Capitol meeting Ms. McClintock and really, connecting his sense of agency to the future. And I think that is what Jubilee, that is what the reunions are about, is passing the vision of the past on to the future so that can be carried forward. So I really love that picture. And we've actually had many different occasions where we were able to connect. Sankofa African American Theater Company has worked with a lot of the materials and connecting the people to the monument with young people. They had 2 plays and at each play we found more descendants that we didn't know about 2 plays about the people in the old 8th Ward, and so young people are learning. And so will you go to the, I think this is the end actually. Can you, Ashley, so these are just the names, but you can go and you can say their names. I don't think we have time now to say their names, but this is just a list of the names. So Ashley, I think we're finished here. Lenwood, thank you for giving us the opportunity to be involved with such a great project. And I hope that we will continue to remember these names and the work they did, but also to carry forward in the work that they did.
You're muted, Lenwood.
I was saying, I think that what is so remarkable about the work that Dr. Jean Corey and Dr. David Pettigrew have done is that they have worked in a cross-racial and intergenerational way of young students from Middle European and Anglo heritage, delving into the histories, the cemeteries, the obituaries of African Americans, and discovering multiculturalism and cultural competency in a way that it was not preachable or teachable, but was hands-on. Also, the young man of mixed race and Latin heritage, picking up the jazz years of Hannah Braxton Jones and writing a poem called Music is My Life, which paid tribute to her time as a singer, was just a remarkable thing. We saw him standing with Representative Joanna McClintock, who is chairman of Pennsylvania's Black Democratic Caucus. And through the reading of that poem, he encouraged her to go into her own genealogical study of her family. She's now become a hero of the project and also an acolyte of genealogy. Dr. Williams, I'm going to ask for your permission if I could ask Dr. Vargus and her team to go next, if that's okay with you. It was our intention, and on the eve of the pandemic, I was in the city council chambers, having the city council pass a resolution that June of 2020 would be Pennsylvania Homecoming Month, and that we would encourage the members of the 100 Voices, the 100 families, to come home to Pennsylvania and to stand on that spot, which was absorbed, stolen, taken by eminent domain. It took 120 years to build that Black neighborhood and enterprise. It took 14 to 16 months to take it apart. And so it was our intention to have Pennsylvania homecoming for these 100, the descendants of these 100 families. And Jean has muted her mic, but it's a stunning and really impressive number of descendants that the students of the university had found all the way across the country. They found Thomas Morris Chester's descendants in Senegal. They've found Annie Amos's descendants in Jamaica and in Haiti. And we hope that now that the veil of the pandemic has been parted, we can recover and we can recruit those families to come home. We refer to them as our White Carnation Society. During the 8 years of the Rendell administration, I had the distinct privilege of being the Cultural and Heritage Director for Pennsylvania. And we launched in that, under that administration, a Pennsylvania Homecoming Initiative. And I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Ione Vargus at Temple University, who actually did a remarkable study, which still has resilience for us, on the homecoming and the family reunion as a dynamic movement. Dr. Vargus's book is the book of that we like to promote for you to read this month. You know that in our Live and Learn series, we spotlight 2 books each month. And so we are spotlighting Dr. Vargus's book, along with Dr. Corey's book of the 100 Voices. And it is a profound pleasure for me to introduce you to Dr. Ione Vargus, and kind of a reunion in its own right for me to be at least virtually in your presence again, Dr. Vargus. It is great to see you and your family that have brought back to the surface.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Lenwood, for this kind invitation. I would like to publicly thank you for your support for the Family Reunion Institute over the years. My recently published book,
Before you start, I
Okay.
didn't know if Lenwood had a particular question that he wanted to ask. I'm Bill Vargas. I am Dr. Vargas' son. And Dr. Vargas is 90 years old, even though you won't guess that by looking at her. So I'm here to help her a little bit, because a lot of what she wrote and studied about Black family reunions was a long time ago. And some of it, she doesn't necessarily remember as much. So I know there's going to be a Q&A afterwards. So I'm going to try to help out and jump in. But I didn't know if Lenwood, if you had a particular question you wanted to ask.
First of all, I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Vargas and Portfolio Advertising when we launched our Pennsylvania Homecoming Initiative. And I have learned, Bill Vargas, that when Dr. Vargas is ready to speak, I simply step back. So yeah, I'll do that now and give the stage to Dr. Vargas.
Yeah, well, we're fortunate enough to have one of the persons who works at Portfolio as a person who keeps our website going.
Our webmaster, Sylvia Ford George. And we, as a matter of fact, she helped us put together a document, maybe we can call that up on the screen now, a PowerPoint presentation. There it is. So first of all, in regard to Black family reunions, it is a time-honored tradition that actually goes back to the beginning of the end, or I should say the end of slavery. And a lot of the people that my mother interviewed have been meeting every year for 50 years, 60 years or more. So the reunions really symbolize the resilience and the hope that Black families have. And of course, in the reunions themselves, there's a lot that's communicated about resilience and hope. And there's a lot of finding out about your ancestors and the tremendous resilience that they had to get you to this point. But really just the reunions themselves symbolize the resilience and the hope that families are able to do this year in and year out. As I said back, it dates back to over 150 years to the emancipation of slavery, because, once slaves found themselves free, they had so many of their own members of the family had been sold to other plantations. And so they had to start having ways of getting everybody back together. And through the years, the family reunion has helped the families defy the systemic attempts to disrupt and destroy the Black family throughout our history, as well as to celebrate intergenerational community, fellowship, and heritage. In other words, like you have the elders coming to teach the young people. And in the next slide, we'll go into some details about my mother and the Family Reunion Institute, and then I'll shut up and let her talk. Dr. Ione Vargus is the founder of the Family Reunion Institute 31 years ago. She started it at Temple University, where she was the first African-American dean in the school's history. And she founded the Family Reunion Institute at Temple University. And then it has morphed into an independent organization. But she began doing her research on family reunions as a result of her own family reunion, and also because, she was hearing people talk about the African-American family, it's disintegrating. I believe it was Bill Moyers on Bill Moyers' Journal back in the day who did this whole thing about, the Black family wouldn't be around by the time the 21st century rolled around. And that really got her dander up and spurred her to start doing research onto how, yes, things are changing and families are moving apart, but yet they are still finding ways to bond. And the family reunion is one of those ways. In fact, it's the chief way that families continue to stay together and to stay in touch. So the goal of the Family Reunion Institute is to strengthen, inspire, support family reunion planning, share useful information and resources, advocate for the teaching of family and reunion history, values, and experiences. Her book that she wrote is not really a how-to book, how to have a family reunion, but by interviewing all these different families, we find out a lot about what they do in their reunions. And also on our website, we talk a lot about, how to strengthen and inspire and support family reunions. So the last bullet point here is that the website and the Facebook page that we have provide the information and the resources to provide and maintain and strengthen extended family and family reunions. And the website address is familyreunioninstitute.net. It's not a .com. We are a net, which, more businesses tend to be nets. So it's www.familyreunioninstitute.net. And then we have a Family Reunion Institute Facebook page as well. So let me now introduce Dr. Ione Vargus, my mother, whom I'm very proud of, to give you some information about herself and about her book. Ma?
Oh, thank you so much, dear. But I'd also like to thank you for all that you do. Both my children do for me at the age of 91. So I'd like to thank you, Lenwood, again, though, for your kind invitation. I would really like to thank you for the support that you have given the Family Reunion Institute over the years. My recently published book, Black Family Reunions, Finding the Rest of Me, is a tribute to and a celebration of family reunions. The book presents the purposes and benefits of family reunions. I visited many Black family reunions from across the country, beginning in the 1980s. What I discovered was that Black family reunions are more than just a social gathering. They are a cultural gift and a social innovation. Family reunions are powerful, time-honored tradition that have contributed to the survival, building, and advancement of Black families. These glorious celebrations that have helped to maintain family cohesiveness while preserving family history and culture. They're captured and they come alive in the book. The book tells a story of several family reunions, in many cases using the voice of the family itself. Although it is not a how-to book, the experiences of planning and building a reunion are conveyed by the families. So that I have a number of families in the book and who have shared what they do, how they do it, and that's all in the book. But it gives great ideas how to do a Black family reunion. Through the stories of the families, it provides information on many aspects of reunion planning, including distinguishing how values and identity are transmitted at reunions, identifies different organizational structures for reunions. It depicts creative activities to revive and maintain family cohesion. It shares interesting ways to present family history. It outlines family initiatives such as educational scholarships and economic programs. It presents ideas of how to engage youth in the reunion planning as well as in the reunion itself. And it suggests how to incorporate the use of technology in reunion planning and communication. I hope that the reader will find the information on the book inspiring as well as practical. The book comes from the stories all come from people who have had reunions, from Black people who've had reunions. I am optimistic that Black reunions, Finding the Rest of Me, will motivate many families to begin and other families to hold on to the family reunion. And you can get the book, Billy, how, where?
Well, The easiest thing to do is to go onto Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. But since they charge a lot of money, they take a big cut out of the book. We prefer that you order it right off of our website, FamilyReunionInstitute.net. And as a matter of fact, I mentioned Sylvia Ford George, who does such a great job with our website. And today, she put on a button on there, an e-commerce cart, so that people can go, just for this event, she put it on there, can go on to FamilyReunionInstitute.net. And there'll be, at the top of the page, it'll say book sale. And when you click on that book sale link, it will take you to where you can order the book, put it in your cart, and pay for it with PayPal. If you don't have PayPal, not familiar with that, you can certainly write a check or money order, which would be made out to Ione Vargus and mailed to P.O. Box 266, Lima, Pennsylvania, 19037. Let me now continue a little bit with some of the information that's in the book that would be so helpful to you as we go to the next screen. The first screen is plan committee structure, okay? Steps in planning. Number one is to get those committees together. So you would form a planning committee 18 to 24 months in advance of the event, because it does take a while to put a family reunion together. It can be a formal committee or an informal committee. And you would hopefully have national and regional committees, and most especially a local host committee, because wherever you end up having the reunion, you know, the people who live in that area are going to be the ones who have to do a great deal of the legwork. So you would have a local host committee. Now, the world is changing. One of the bad things, obviously, about the pandemic, among the fact that, you know, it also was, 600,000 people lost their lives, et cetera, was that it interrupted so much of what we do. And certainly in terms of trying to have reunions, that was certainly made more difficult or impossible. But then this thing that we're doing now called Zoom came along. And so now you can use Zoom to do a lot of your planning, to get, your family members together. So it doesn't completely burden the local host committee as much. But certainly you want to have a committee made up of people who live in the area where the event is going to take place. The next screen is about building a contact list. So you start early and you gather family names and contact information for those families. And that's interesting too, because, in the old days, that meant getting people's names and addresses and sending them a letter. And then we got all technology and technological and started sending emails. And now the young kids consider emails like old-fashioned, so they don't even pay attention to emails. So you maybe have to reach out to them with social media. But anyway, you gather the family names and the contact information and the best way to get in touch with them. You ask a family member in each family branch or each geographic area to assist in gathering that contact information. And then you find somebody in the family who's proficient in Excel, who can do spreadsheets and set up a database and enter all that information. So now you can send out a mass email to all the members of the family, and or social media addresses, and or text for a lot of the younger people. But the point is, you gather every family member's name, whether you think they can attend the reunion or not, or whether you think they won't attend the reunion or not, because you leave that up to them. They may surprise you. And then you use your list of contact information to make family announcements, send out a survey, stay in touch with everybody throughout the process. At the end of my mother's book, there's a sample newsletter of a family, the Ransom Cease family. They put together a beautiful newsletter. And in this newsletter, they're letting you know everything that's going on with the family to keep you interested, but they're also in there, they keep promoting the fact that reunion is going to be coming up in 6 months or whenever, to keep you kind of salivating, looking forward to it. But as I also mentioned, now we got Zoom. So that's a good way too. You can have Zoom meetings from time to time with the family members, leading up to, staying in touch with, and promoting the fact that there is going to be a reunion. The next slide is about setting a location and a date. And that would involve surveying the family to make sure that they have a say-so to offer their opinions in what the location should be, what the date should be, and the length of the reunion. Ultimately, the planning committee that you choose is going to make the final decision, but still having that input from family members certainly helps. And then that final decision is going to be based on several factors. First of all, the location of the planning committee lead. You know, some reunions are held in the same city each year, or if it's a biannual reunion every other year, usually in a location where the family started, where the ancestors, the last known ancestors, you know, used to live. But also the person who's planning it, you know, it's best if the reunion is held in their city, if it's not in the same place every year. So one year, you know, my wonderful late cousin Risa lives in LA, organized a beautiful reunion in LA. And then another time, my wonderful sister, Suzanne, organized a reunion in her hometown, our hometown of Philadelphia. So it makes sense to kind of think about having the reunion in a place where whoever that person is, that really get up and go person, that go-getter person is, who's going to make this thing happen, have it in their city so they can be, you know, boots on the ground making it happen. Also, you'd have to consider, of course, what cities have the best hotel rates for guest rooms and meeting rooms. And of course, the geographic proximity of the family. If it's not spread all over the country and most of the people are in a certain area, obviously it makes sense to have the reunion in that area. And then our next slide is about preparing the budget. You got to figure out what the reunion expenses are going to be, how much money you're going to have to put out in deposits up front, what the hotel is going to cost, where you're going to stay, travel expenses, food, souvenirs. You're going to make t-shirts with the family name on it, honoraria to pay speakers, and you have to try to figure out all those expenses. And it's not easy to figure out all that stuff. And then you have to figure out how to pay for it. And that's reunion funding. So there may be a family benefactor. I mentioned my wonderful late cousin Risa, who passed away recently and left a nice sum of money for us to put to the family reunion, which was a beautiful thing. Holding fundraisers, you know, it might be a car wash or it might be a party. And you hold these fundraisers and you get people to, you know, pay for them. And therefore that money goes into your family reunion budget. Family chapter dues. If your family is a really well-organized one that has chapters and people have to pay dues, that can obviously go to the reunion. And then the family members and the registration fee from the family members will each pay a registration fee. And, you know, again, based on what your reunion expenses are going to be, you figure out what would be a registration fee that's both affordable for people, but yet allows you to do the things you want to do, to have that picnic, to have that sightseeing tour, to have that maybe a cruise for the family or whatever it is you want to do. So those are basically some basic ideas about family reunions. And again, a lot more information, familyreunioninstitute.net. As we said, the book itself, Black Family Reunions, is more about the benefits of the reunion. And then familyreunioninstitute.net is more about the nuts and bolts of how to put a reunion together. So I'm sure there may be some questions for myself and for Dr. Vargus that we can try to answer for you.
Bill, I'll ask a couple of questions and then we'll hear from Dr. Williams. Then we're going to open to our virtual audience. They're putting questions in the chat.
Okay.
But Dr. Vargus, I wanted to ask you, my first question is, how did Temple University as an institution assist you in stabilizing this movement of the family reunion? And what body of, I know you have gathered a great amount of information about the economic impact of family reunions on the destination. So I'd like to know if and how the institution helped you, and also where does that information and that data on the impact on tourism of Black family reunions reside?
Okay. Well, I hate to say this, but I mean, the institution didn't help me that much.
That's what I wanted to know.
No, they didn't get in my way either, but the gathering of the families, the money that we spent and all just came from the families themselves. We didn't, of course, it's been a long while since we started this reunion. It's been over 30 years now, so I don't remember all of the details.
Well, I wanted to ask because they claim so highly their contribution to the Black Family Reunion Institute. I was wondering how they help you. And Bill and Dr. Vargus, I know you've got some incredible statistical information about the impact on tourism of family reunions. Where does that information reside now?
Oh, that's a good question. But first, I must say, Lenwood, as a graduate of Temple University, I must point out that, yeah, they didn't really help my mother with this, but they are still a great institution. They did make her the first Black dean. They did just hire their first Black president.
Yes.
A week ago. And I had a great experience there. But no, they didn't do much. I mean, I think they provided some space for you, Ma, for a little while or something. But in reference to your second question, we did some Google searching. Again, Sylvia Ford George, who's on our Reunion Institute committee and on our board, and very instrumental. She did a lot of research too, because in terms of our own fundraising efforts, we need to show commercial enterprises that you can make a lot of money and bring a lot of money to a region. Like, for example, if somebody happens to be on a tourism bureau or something, they need to know that you can bring a lot of money into an area by having family reunions. So, we went online and did a lot of research, and off the top of my head, I don't remember the numbers and percentages, but I think, a large number, not only do a large number of families have reunions, but the majority actually have a reunion every year rather than every 2 years or 3 years. So there's a lot of money out there in terms of providing for family reunions, hosting family reunions, or providing some services for them.
On my way out of government, Dr. Vargas, I kept all of our records of our work together for 10 years. And so I will give that work to the Dauphin County Public Library. The statistics are only, I think we ended in 2014. So while it's 7 years old, you can refresh the math with your own local tourism industry. But Black family reunions are no longer barbecues in your Aunt Elizabeth's backyard now. They are blocks of rooms in hotels, major catering contracts, cruises, theater nights, and the economic impact of these family reunions was laid out by the multiple industries in Dr. Vargas's 2010 to 2014 work about the number of industries that benefit from the family reunion. Also, I wanted to ask Dr. Vargas, and you might just be off the top of your head, how do we make families comfortable about fellowship and gathering again in a post-pandemic society? This is a challenging.
Yeah, that is kind of tough, really. to answer.
That's a good question. As a matter of fact, that's the question that is either on our Family Reunion Institute website this month as the sticky reunion question, or is going to be next month in July. But I'm not sure there is an answer to that. Obviously things are starting to open up as people continue to get vaccinated, hopefully. And, we're not required to wear masks anymore. And it's a good question, and probably something to put out there as you're planning a reunion to your fellow family members, to find out how comfortable they are with meeting. And actually, because it does take such a long time, like maybe a year and a half to plan a reunion, I think that in a lot of cases, families passed on trying to do one this year and are working on next year, when hopefully everything will be back to normal.
Maybe we can help you in our Live and Learn series by asking family reunion planners of our 100 Voices to meet with you all just in a circle the wagons kind of way, and have an open dialogue about how challenging it is for families to feel comfortable about embracing themselves, embracing each other, gathering in the same room, bringing intergenerational. I know, Dr. Vargus, the hardest part for me in these last 14 years 14 months has not been hugging my grandchildren, that my baby's kiss might hurt us both, and so maybe, Bill, we can do that for you. We've got a number of, like Dr. Williams, who will speak next, a number of reunion planners in our 100 Voices, and maybe we can provide you the service of a facilitated dialogue with some reunion planners.
All right.
Well, I saw that Dr. Williams gave 2 thumbs up when you made that suggestion.
Yeah.
So that is great. Oh, we would so much love to do that.
Yes.
Not just about that particular issue, but in general, to have a chance to those people.
And that brings me to the next. My mother is 100 years old, and we have been trying to struggle with, should we gather the family to honor her for her 100 years, or should we honor her by not gathering the family, and not threatening her health? And it is a dynamic and critical question that families. Meanwhile, I hope that you'll think about this, and I hope that Dr. Williams will speak about this, how we capture the stories of those elders who passed from us during the pandemic, and how we maintain and retain their oral histories, their stories, and especially the documents of record that they had, their photos and those birth certificates in their Bibles, and those things which are the treasures, relics, and artifacts of our families that are hidden in the attic, Dr. Ione Vargus, under the bed, in the back of the closet, at the top shelf, are the artifacts of our history and our families. And we would love to continue that conversation with you all about how we capture the stories of those who are now with the angels, and how we construct before they turn to dust the stories from their personal collections.
Yes, those are good issues that you raise. And I think the family, it's still up to the family, though, to your family members really to handle them and talk about them,
Really, Ma, I mean, as Lenwood points out, it's a especially different situation because of COVID, but at the same time, this is something that almost all the families that you interviewed do anyway, is have some kind of memorial for those who have gone since the last reunion, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
And I believe you all also advocate that someone is appointed historian or archivist of the family.
Mhm. Yes, that's true. That will see the book. Well, much of this is actually in the book, and it comes from the people who do these kinds of things. I mean, really, part of why I did the book, was because I was a little upset at how the Black family was being viewed, particularly by white reporters and people who were on the air, and that was disturbing to me. And I said to myself one day, I have to write a book. And because I used to teach a course on Black families when I taught at Brandeis University, which is a Jewish university in Massachusetts. But but my course was well handled, was well taken, and it was on Black families. So I, felt that I knew something about Black families, and I wanted them to be not discouraged by these kinds of shots that were being taken at the time. I don't know what was going on in the white community, but it was at that time, several years ago, when I began the writing of the book, that I was hearing these negative things about Black families, and I wasn't going to stand for it. And so I wrote the book, and the book itself is really a story of Black families, and they are the persons who are giving the information.
Well, Dr. Vargus, we're awfully glad you didn't stand for it, and we are awfully glad that you stood this 90 years for our pride. We have our saying that if Black lives matter, then the history of Black lives matter also. And it is a privilege for me to introduce you to Dr. Jean Corey and Dr. Sharonn Williams, because the three of you, when we thought about this workshop, the three of you came to mind immediately. May I ask Dr. Williams if you will add your information and comments, then we will have a great equilateral triangle of these proud and powerful three women who, and we can open the floor to conversation. Dr. Sharonn Williams.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone.
Hey.
And that was wonderful to hear about that book and your philosophy. And I think we have a lot in common. So I am going to try to shorten what I had planned. So I'm going to go very quickly and then kind of let Lenwood guide us through questions.
You have about 20, 25 minutes, Sharonn.
Do I? Okay,
yeah.
So don't rush too much.
Yeah.
Because I can go fast.
Well, we want to leave some time for the three of you to talk to each other and our audience, but you don't have to gallop.
All right, so I'll keep it at a pretty high level though. So I'm not going to get into the weeds. I'm just going to give you an overview of what we do. And our group now has a name. When we first started, we didn't have a name. So we're called Kindred Spirits, GWG. And GWG stands for Genealogy Workshop Group. So, I kind of, really try to put across to people how this is a work of heart, doing family research is very time intensive. And we're not doing it to collect people like charms on a bracelet. We're doing it to be able to tell the stories of our ancestors, to give voice to them, and to keep things in historic perspective, and then to pass that on to the next generation. So that's what Kindred Spirits is all about. Can everybody see this PowerPoint okay and everything? Okay, good. So like most people in my age group, yeah, I'm really old, but most people got started back in the 70s when Alex Haley, came out with Roots. And of course, we all wanted to find our own Kunta Kinte. Little did I know that I had actually started before that, though, with what I called my blue-haired crew. And again, back then, the elders, the women in my family used to get a blue rinse. So they all had this blue hair. I never understood that really, but anyhow, I listened to their stories. And their stories led me down this path of, wow, I wonder what that person was really like that they're telling. I wonder how much truth there is in that story and how much is just a good story. So that led me down the path. And then Roots, the TV series, came on. And of course, everybody saw that. And that just, made you want to do it even more. And then I had a cousin who was actually starting to write down the tree, the pedigree. And we started doing some things together. And then we got everything into the desktop computer version, and Y2K came along. And so they said, well, your software may not work anymore, and maybe you want to put your tree online. So that's how we started doing that. And then Skip Gates came along. And of course, everybody started watching Finding Your Roots. And then the family started being interested in what I was doing. Prior to Skip Gates, though, I will tell you, a lot of people in the family went, girl, why are you airing our dirty laundry? So, it's a double-edged sword when you start doing family research, and it's either history or it's mythology. I don't make the history, I just document it. Some things I keep private, you have to use discretion. And some things, it's like the griot in me, the storyteller. Once you get around the family, you want to share stories. You want to let them know about the agricultural engineer that studied with George Washington Carver that nobody ever told you about, but that's in my family. So we need to share that. And then, of course, through Kindred Spirits, I thought, let me start passing on some of the things that I've learned over time to save other people time, especially African-American people, because a lot of it mechanically is the same as it is for everyone else, but some of it is not, and you have to look in different places. So the first reassurance I got that I was doing something right didn't come until just recently. My great-grandfather was a USCT member, and his name was Ephraim Slaughter. And Lenwood knows him well, and thank you, Lenwood, for coming to this area and bringing our history to the fore so that people really understand the wealth of knowledge in Harrisburg. And through Caleb Jackson and Lenwood Sloan and the people at the Civil War Museum, they decided to honor my great-grandfather by putting a life-size statue of him in the Civil War Museum. So this was my first confirmation. And a lot of the research that I had done on Ephraim led to that being possible. Because if I hadn't done that work, even though, they had heard of the Legion here that's named for him, they wouldn't have known a lot of the things that I knew from my research. So including that picture in the middle is the big house on the plantation where he was enslaved. And that is still in North Carolina. So that was my, shining moment for my family, where they all went, oh, she was right. Man, this really does mean something. And then we were asked to take part in a local documentary film that is now available on YouTube. And while we were going around promoting that film and answering questions, people started coming to me and saying, can you help me with my family? Can you help me find information? I heard it's impossible to explore African-American families beyond a certain point and so forth. And I said, nope, I'm proof that it's not impossible. So yes, I can help you do it. I'm not going to do it for you, but I can show you how to do it. And so all of these people that you see pictured here were part of that, whole project with us. And there are more people that I couldn't fit onto the screen. But it was planting the seeds for kindred spirits, only I didn't know it at the time. Within our group, and we have grown exponentially since we started, like in 2016, 2017. We even have people now from other states. Lenwood, I don't think I told you that. And we also have a few deaf people, because I used to teach the deaf, and I was able to bring some people on board who, didn't understand the importance of it before, but now they're hooked. So in the middle of the screen, you see some of the 100 names of the ancestors of the people who are now part of our active group. So what do we do in Kindred Spirits? First of all, my mantra is we meet people where they are. So wherever you are, if you have nothing more than the names of your immediate family, we can help you. We can get you where you need to be. We can give you some ideas. But we help people by getting them to organize any documents they have, any birth dates, any names, any cities or towns they think people are from, artifacts that they might have in their homes, the family Bibles, diaries, anything. And then we say, where are your people from? And some of them know and some of them don't know. We're here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and some of the people say, well, we're from Harrisburg. Oh, okay, but where are you from really? So some people do want to do the DNA research, but then they don't know how to interpret it. And then just getting the DNA results back and not doing anything with it leads to a lot of disappointment. People are going, I don't even know why I did this. So you have to have an idea in mind why this is important to you. We also look at doing work online, but it's important to me that people learn how to do real world research as well. Online is fine, but sometimes you're not even sure that your ladder is leaning against the right wall before you climb it. So to look at real documents helps people to understand the importance of that. And when people first come into the group, the first thing we do is have them do their own timeline. So looking at major events in their life in comparison with the history of the country, the history of the world, who was president at the time, and all that kind of thing helps them put their life in perspective, which helps them then as they research the ancestors. And then this screen also shows you in the upper right, the Freedmen's Bureau records. So of course I volunteered and helped with the indexing that was done a few years ago of some of those records. And of course somebody would call, sorry about that. Okay, so at any rate, since I help to index that, I can really help people to understand how to find things in those records, whether they are looking at the ones that have been indexed or the ones that still need to be indexed. And then I try to enlist them in assisting with some of that so that you learn how to interpret historic data on your own. So we do all of that at no charge. There's no fee, no membership, or anything to be a part of our group. On the left side, this is an example of that timeline I was referring to. So we have templates that I've built, of course I have, because I want to save you time and I don't want you to go through the aggravation I went through. So I've created templates that all you have to do is pull them up, start filling in your information for each year, and then already typed into the template is the presidential list in the middle, and then the world event and local event along the right-hand side. The pictures on this page show you some of the places we've been to for field trips, like Lenwood mentioned the Simon Cameron Mansion in Harrisburg, which is now the Dauphin County Historical Society. And they have records there that we've used. And when I take people to these places, I let them know what's there. We spend some time, they can come back later on their own. The state archives and the state library are also good resources. And we've participated with conferences, especially now that some of them are virtual, through the Mormons, and that's their building, the Family Search building in the middle. And then we've gone to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. In our group, we also teach history. We have, and we let people know, we announce ahead of time when we're going to focus on a special theme or topic. And so a few years ago, folks thought I was making things up when I started talking about the Freedom Towns. But I also have family that I know lived in some of these places, but some of the history is just fascinating. And then I also threw in the beach places and summer resorts that African Americans would frequent. You know, some people never knew about Martha's Vineyard and the Inkwell. Some people never knew about Idlewild or different places. And so then we talk about the Green Book. So we kind of tie a lot of things together, but give people a piece of history that they never learned in school. And then we always bring it back to the local. So that's where we then talked about the 8th Ward and, you know, what happened to it, the history of it, the makeup of it, and so forth. And, you know, other places in Harrisburg that happened once that disappeared and then redlining started. Okay, where and when? Well, generally, we're a part of the Harry Jones Hidden History Program through the Dauphin County Public Library System. And they gave us a home. They allowed us to meet at a library locally that's called the Madeline Allwine Memorial Library. And in short, it's called MOM. What a perfect place to have our group at MOM. So that's where we were meeting until the pandemic came. And then we started meeting online, first through my private Zoom. And then the library said, why don't you use our Zoom? Then, you know, you can stay on for 2 hours instead of just 1. So that's what we do now. And we're scheduled out to the end of the year. And now we're being offered a new home. So we'll see how that goes. We meet the first Saturday of every month, except January and July because of the holidays that are generally the first weekend of that month. We meet quarterly for a book circle. And, you know, we pick a book, like recently we read Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. And the last book that we read last quarter was called Finding Otho. And it was a book that was written by a family historian about her research of one of her ancestors. And what was so fabulous about that is the book is like a guidebook of how to do the work. But then she offered to come on to our book talk and interact with us. So we actually got to have a book talk with the author of the book that we read. And again, I talked about taking people to real world locations. And we don't always go to magnificent places like libraries and archives. Sometimes we go to places like cemeteries and church basements, you know, find out all the things you can learn there. And funeral directors are just a wealth of information that a lot of people hadn't considered before. So when I first started, these are the places where I started. There was no internet, so you had to go to these places. Now these people go by choice, and so we limit the amount of time they spend there. So why do we do this? We do this because it is important to me that we stop letting other people whitewash our stories. We need to start telling our own history, and we need to pass it on and make sure that the voices that weren't heard in their times can be heard now. So, you know, we try to promote not only finding of these facts, but sharing of these facts. And now, Dr. Vargus, I think one of our members is part of your family group, because what you're seeing on the screen right now, on the left, that's a family reunion booklet that I produced for one of my family reunions that we held in Fort Washington a couple years ago. And on the right is a newsletter that one of our members, you know, contributed of one of their family reunions. So I think I heard your son mention that this is part of your family group. And this is a picture of one of our family reunions. So the whole idea we try to get across to people is, as we're researching family history, we want to make sure that we make the current generation aware and try to start teaching skills. So I loved hearing that your book has a component on, you know, sharing the stories with young people. So at our reunion, when we have a time to meet with the adults in the room, and we talk about, you know, the family history and what we found out recently since the last time we got together, then somebody else who understands the little people and how they think, they meet with the kids and they do art projects and they do different things that help them understand family history as well. They cook and learn family recipes and why that's important to pass on and so forth. So in a nutshell, Lenwood, I think I did it pretty quickly, but I would like to just invite other people to join us and come. And here's our email address, kindredspiritsgwg@gmail.com. And we'll help you. We'll meet you where you are and get you started.
Thank you so much. So we're looking through the lens of Dr. Jean Corey at designating the summer of 2022 from Memorial Day to Labor Day as Pennsylvania homecoming season. And we're looking for our 100 voices of the old 8th Ward as being the core of families that plan family reunions here. And we will encourage them to use Dr. Vargus's book as a primer, as a Bible, as yeast, as fuel, and maybe along the year joining Dr. Williams and her colleagues in helping to find. But every one of you who are listening, who are not in our Harrisburg area, you have a community in your neighborhood that was like the old days Ford. You have a place that was vital and is now wiped out. You have a church that was the center of family and community life that has now aged out. And you have the opportunity, and dare I say, the obligation, as Martin Delaney says, we must be the architects of our own destiny, to gather the people in fellowship, collect their resource and findings. It is not easy. My mother's father was a Black Cherokee, and the Black Cherokees did not become United States citizens until 1906. And so he doesn't show up for the first time until the 1910 census. And we know nothing because the Black Cherokees were neither citizens of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, nor citizens of the United States. That family's history stops. My father's grandfather was an Irishman. And as soon as he got off of our Ellis Island, he changed his name. And it took us a while to track him to Ellis Island and then find him again in Minneapolis, Sharon, and try to link these two people together, you know. And also, Bill, I do not want to discount, I said family reunions are more than your Aunt Elizabeth's potato salad in the backyard, but I kind of wish Aunt Elizabeth had left us the recipe to that potato salad, you know, because it would have become a real family treasure. And so there's lots of ways, doors and windows into this subject. And we have a bit of time now where we can take some questions from the chat to our three presenters, or they can ask questions of each other. And I'd like to start Dr. Vargas and Sharonn and Jean, if you have questions or comments you'd like to make to each other. Jean, would you unmic?
No, I don't have a question.
But I just wanted you to unmute so we
Oh,
can
yes.
so now, Ashley, if you will read any comments or questions from the chat.
Lenwood, at this moment, we don't have any questions that have been submitted.
Excellent, not excellent, but clarified. Clarified. I would like to then ask each of our guests to just have a few parting words and a recap. And I again put my P.T. Barnum hat on. We promote the books of our guests, and so we want to promote that you support Dr. Vargas and your own family by securing copies of her book for those who plan family reunions in your family. And then also Dr. Jean Corey and the Messiah University website, which is digitalharrisburg.com, can tell you how to get a copy of the 100 Voices book. We're really looking forward to Sharonn's book, and maybe I'll be able to, in one of the next sessions, promote her book. But Jean, if you would like to make a parting comment or thought, or
yes, I'm trying to, actually, I don't know if it won't let me. Ashley, can I share a screen?
Yes, you should be able to. There's the green button down at the bottom.
Yeah. I don't know why it's not showing up. Well, never mind. I just had a picture of my family at the monument after.
Dr. Jean, if you put your cursor, because sometimes it doesn't show up unless you put your cursor over the bottom left of the screen, and then all of a sudden it'll pop up.
Okay, put share screen. It's just, I'm not seeing the pictures. That's what's so weird about it.
Oh, the picture that you want to share.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you have to bring that up, and then
Yeah, I have it up. It's just not showing up when I push share screen. It says it's all blank stuff. I don't know. But thank you though. But anyway, I was just telling Lenwood that my family met after, you know, these, I don't know, 18 months. How long has COVID been? Forever. We all got to be in person and touch each other and hug each other. But and then I got to take them to the monument to see the monument, which was just very gratifying. And they were appropriately oohed and awed. But the grandbaby's 18 months, and I think about these, you know, generations that are coming together, and how just they, you know, all the different stories and histories, and how that enlarges the reunions that little boy will have. And Sharonn, think about how I want to bring those families together to do their genealogy to hand over to the baby. Because it's, you know, it's America. It's this gift of many, many stories coming together. And Sharonn has been so it's been such a gift to be able to be part of some of those genealogy groups that she's had, but I've been so busy looking at the 100 Voices. I haven't spent a lot of time on my own family or my children's family. So this is exciting to think about. I retire this month, so I'll have that kind of time hopefully afterwards. But my parting words are, I do hope you'll take advantage and go to digitalharrisburg.com. There's a PDF of 100 Voices, but there's nothing like holding that book in your hands and working with it. Sharonn, we had a group of teachers, I just finished this afternoon, a group of seminars of secondary teachers. Most of them were from West Shore schools. And they all went online and ordered 100 Voices before this week was over. And we had a field trip to the monument, and they were so excited about getting their students involved in that and doing research as well. So I should have connected them with you to get that research. But anyway, I hope you will look at the digitalharrisburg.com and look at the wonderful stories. And definitely, if you know of anybody on the 100 names, or know of anyone that's related, please connect us so we can continue the search. Our folder is growing more and more and more of our folder of descendants, and it's very exciting to find.
And there's a place online where if you have a fact, you don't have to be a family member. If you belong to their church, their sorority, their Masonic or Eastern Star Lodge, if they went to your mother's beauty parlor, you know, you can put their stories. Dr. Sharonn Williams, parting thoughts, parting shots.
Parting thoughts. I again, kindred spirits, gwg@gmail.com. We would love to have you come and visit, especially while we're still virtual. You know, because you don't have to drive here. We can just get you involved, but once we get you, we're keeping you. So, you know, start getting your stuff together, and then we'll help you get it out there. Thanks, Lenwood, for doing what you do.
Bill Vargus and Dr. Vargus, will you give us your parting thoughts as a benediction for this?
I'm sorry, give you what?
Will you give us some parting thoughts or ideas or a farewell?
I don't have anything.
I am just so excited to see you, so vital and vibrant, Dr. Vargus. My time with you is how I entered my own family's history and work, and we've had each household do what we refer to as a memory box.
Mhm.
Because they all know the same stories, but they remember them in different ways.
Mhm.
You know, and so they all are doing a memory box for my mother's 100th birthday, and
That's great.
yeah, her history will be in all these different boxes, all these different pictures. Thank you all so much.
And give your 100-year-old mother our best from the Vargas family, would you please, Lenwood? And thank you for this event.
Yeah.
It's great to be with Dr. Williams and Dr. Corey. Dr. Corey, enjoy your retirement, dear.
Thank you.
Yes.
We
Very-
always in Live and Learn, it comes from that old folklore vernacular. Well, live and learn, child, live and learn, you know? So we always end by saying, Dr. Vargas, we are all we've got. So we've got to circle the way against each one, teach one, bring one back into New Self-Lifting. Thank you all very much, and thanks
Thanks so
especially
much.
to our
Thank
colleagues
you.
at the Dauphin County Public Library System for hosting these sessions. Be well, be blessed until we meet again.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
night. Bye.
Very interesting. Mhm.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Thank you. very much.